Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, ciao, bonjour, namaste, jumbo. Bienvenidos. Hey, my name's Jed Lee. Welcome to Reading with Your Kids. We are coming to you from the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville, located in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts, in the shadow of the Great Blue Hills. We are so very honored and absolutely delighted that you join us in our mission to help all families grow closer through reading. We do that by sharing fun, thoughtful, and thought-provoking conversations with fascinating people who just happen to be writing books for kids of all ages. You can do your part by telling all of your family and friends about the show and letting them know that they can hear us on the WREB AM/FM 24/7 radio network. And they can find us on the iHeartRadio app, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Good Pods, Podcast Addict, Amazon Music, CastBox, Player FM, Boomplay, Ghana, wherever you find your favorite shows. We have two really wonderful guests for you today. First up, Ciara O'Neal will be here to celebrate not only her beautiful picture book, Pedro the Pirate, but also celebrate foster care and the joy of being a foster parent and a foster family can be, and also the joy of adoption. And later on, Adina Oberman is returning to Reading with Your Kids to celebrate two great new board books, Let's Count New York City and N is for New York City. Before I invite our guests into the studio, I want to ask you a question. Are you and your family watching the Summer Olympics? Well, we have a perfect book that can help keep the excitement of the Summer Olympics going all year long. It's called Takedown by Laura Chauvin. And in this book, Lev is determined to compete at the state wrestling championships. But then he's paired with a brand new partner, a girl. Lev and Michaela push each other to excel, but when they meet on the mat, only one can win. Takedown is a multiple award-winning and stateless-nominated middle-grade novel about family, friendships, and hard work. Get your copy today at bookshop.org or check out the free educator's guide at laurachauvin.com. This episode is brought to you by Bella Santini and the Land of Everlasting Change. Hey, what if you and your kids can learn all about emotions simply by reading a bedtime story together? Introducing Bella Santini and the Land of Everlasting Change, the award-winning fairy tale that has captured the hearts of parents and children alike. Join Bella Santini on an unforgettable adventure through a strange and a magical world. This book has been called a life-changing masterpiece that will empower children and allow them to understand themselves and the world in new ways. The book is strongly recommended for all parents. This captivating story improves well-being and fosters emotional growth. This book has won the prestigious Golden Wizard Book Prize and the Mom's Choice Awards. Get your copy today of Bella Santini and the Land of Everlasting Change. A magical journey to emotional growth awaits. If you are looking for a book that is going to inspire your kids to check out the STEM fields, please be sure to pick up your copy of Astronaut Aquanaut, How Space Science and Sea Science Interact, written by our Dean of all things STEM and STEAM, Jennifer Swanson. Journey from the deepest trenches in the ocean to the farthest humans have ventured into space and learn what it takes to explore these extremes. You just might be surprised by how similar the domains of astronauts and aquanauts really are. Space and the ocean. If you don't think they go together, think again. Both deep sea and space explorers have to worry about pressure, temperature, climate, and most importantly, how to survive in a remote and hostile environment. Your kids are going to be thrilled with this book. It's like reading a thriller, but it's filled with fantastic pictures and photographs, and you're going to love it. It is a Reading with Your Kids certified great read and would be a great addition to your family library. Astronaut Aquanaut, How Space Science and Sea Science Interact, written by Jennifer Swanson. Join us right now from the great state of Texas. Our guest is here today to celebrate. Her brand new book is called Pedro the Pirate, please welcome to the show, Ciara O'Neal. Hey, Ciara, how are you?
Fabulous, Jed. Thanks for having me.
Delighted to have you on. You are decidedly not a pirate. At least you don't look like a pirate.
Some days. Today is not that day, though.
So tell us about Pedro.
Well, Pedro is a foster child who is quite reluctant to join his new crew. He fancies himself a captain of his own ship, not in need of anybody else to help him with the rough seas. But as he journeys along, he discovers that everything's just a little bit better when you can welcome a new crew.
I love it. I love it. It makes total sense that a foster child, somebody who's maybe been bounced between 2 or 3 or 15 homes in short periods of time, who probably has to carry his belongings around in a green plastic garbage bag. Not surprising that that person may be a little bit reluctant to develop friendships and trust people.
That is absolutely true. I'm actually a foster parent. Well, I formerly was a foster parent, and I'm proud to say that I'm an adoptive parent now. But we had plenty of kids that definitely came through. I remember one time they came in with their big bags of their things. They didn't have suitcases, and it just dumped it on the floor and said, "Here we are." And it was heartbreaking and beautiful all at the same time that they were coming in and trusting us with their things. But it definitely is something that is reflected in the book.
Yeah. I want to take this moment to thank you for being a foster mom, to thank you for being an adopted mom. We've talked here a lot on the podcast about foster care, foster kids. I was blown away. I think you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the figure is that it's 400,000 kids in foster care on average every day. That's correct. A horrifying number. That's a horrifying number. And it's just so wonderful that you were able to step up and to provide that loving family for the
Thank
kids.
you.
Yeah.
We were so blessed. And just for any of the viewers out there that are thinking, wow, that's not something I can do, you'd be surprised about what you can do. And these kids do seem hard, and in some ways they are. But in more ways, it's the most beautiful thing that you can do.
Yeah. Well, you just said these kids seem hard. I was blessed with 2 kids of my own who were, for the most part, perfectly healthy and great kids, but they were pains in the butt sometimes. So, it kind of goes along with being a parent.
You are absolutely correct. It does.
Yeah. I want to talk a little bit more about the book, but this is such an important issue, I think, and I want to bring awareness to it. There's somebody who is incredibly close to me that came to our family through the foster care system. I'm not her foster dad, but she is certainly one of my favorite people in the world, and I think I'm probably, if not the favorite person in her life, I'm somewhere in the top 100, I guess. But and the reason I mention that is not to pat myself on the back, but you mentioned there are some families out there that don't think they can do this. And that might be true. My beautiful wife, we hosted international kids, but she wasn't comfortable being a foster parent. You don't have to be a foster parent to support a foster kid, to help out.
Absolutely.
So talk about some of the ways that somebody might be able to help you and your child.
Well, if you are in a community where you have foster children, it's fabulous to volunteer at events for them. You can always contact a local adoption agency. They'll often have days that you can go out, and even if you don't feel super comfortable interacting with them, you can put a fake tattoo on, or you can run a water game. There are agencies that you can call. If you're a business, if you want to offer your support that way, you could do that as well. You can also become what they would call like an emergency placement. You might have kids for 48 hours until they can get them to a foster home. You can just be a babysitter. So those are all great things that you can do. If you're looking for a local organization, sometimes you can call them, and they have set up like buddies where you can do mentorship, or you can go and you can read, you can donate things. So those are all ways. There's so many ways to support them, and these families definitely need it.
Yeah, I love that. And if you have any old backpacks or suitcases or anything like that around, I mentioned that green plastic garbage bag. That's how so many foster kids are taking their belongings. And what does that say to a kid? Here, kid, put all your stuff in this garbage bag. They're already not feeling great. A lot of them feel abandoned. We've talked a lot here on the pod. Just a little things can make a huge difference in somebody's life.
It's true. One organization that is fabulous, and they actually will purchase things, is called Foster Love. They purchase bags for the kids. They will get various items, like just the little things that you don't think about, like toothbrush, toothpaste, because the kids are leaving their homes without these. They provide them stuffed animals, blankets within those bags. And so that's an excellent organization that I always like to talk about.
Yeah. So going back to Pedro the Pirate, I think I'm guessing that your child must have been pretty excited to see themselves portrayed on the pages of a book.
It is one of the most amazing things for them to look and see themselves. I think one of the big things that struck home for my kids is our family doesn't match. We don't look exactly alike. We have just a diverse group, and it is amazing. And to see a family that reflected that, I think that was super important for my children to see. And one of the things that I especially love is that the illustrator really chose to bring out the father figure in this book, because a lot of times when you hear foster parents sharing, a lot of times you see the mother. But I love that in this book, you really see the father and that precious relationship, and it really reflects our dynamic in our family. And I was just thrilled that that is how it was portrayed.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And of course, we know that books can be mirrors, windows, and sliding glass doors. And I love the fact that Pedro the Pirate can give kids in a typical family, a non-foster family, a chance to look in and understand that Pedro could be a great friend and is a part of their big human family.
That's absolutely true. And he'll be a part of their family in a fun, quirky way.
Did you always aspire to be a children's author?
I actually, when I was, like, if you ask writers, they will always tell you, like, wow, when I was little, I just wrote and wrote and wrote, almost always. And I was that kid, but I became a teacher when I lived abroad and absolutely loved being a teacher. But every single lesson, I was like, okay, we're going to read a new book. And as we did that, I just grew to love it, and then realized, wow, I'm telling them just as many stories as I am reading to them, and I think I should try it. And so after a lot of failure, I've got some wins, and it has been wonderful.
That's cool. You mentioned teaching abroad. How does teaching in other countries compare with teaching here in the States?
That is a giant question. There's a lot of challenges. I was working in a second world country, the Dominican Republic, and so we lacked supplies. We lacked a lot of ability to test for some learning disabilities, that kind of thing. But our curriculum was wide open, and I got to teach project-based learning. I didn't have the standardized testing that I have here. So in some ways, I like the accountability that I have here in the United States and the ability to find programs for my kids in need. But I loved the freedom of teaching abroad, and I loved the kids. I love the kids both places, but my Dominican children will always have a special place in my heart.
One of the things I was telling Ciara before we started recording that I was at an educational conference in Nashville last week, and one of the things that I heard repeatedly from the educators is that it's becoming so restrictive in some schools to the point where teachers have a script, and they're not, I was going to say they're not encouraged, they're not allowed to go off script. And I don't think that's teaching. That is, one of the reasons I switched from my role as a teacher and decided to become a librarian was because we were getting a lot of curriculum that was canned curriculum, and very much like, you need to stick to this and you need to be at the same pace. And I just felt like constantly saying to them, but you don't know my kids. Mm-hmm. This is what my kids need now. And so being in the library, I've got to kind of take a step back, and I still have certain things that I have to teach, but I'm very whatever it takes to get literacy and get our students motivated to read, and also doing the makerspace, whatever gets them to think outside the box. My principal, at least, has let me run with it. So I'm grateful to her for sure. That's one. I have said here in the podcast that my librarian in my elementary school when I was in 7th and 8th grade, I think if it wasn't for the librarian, I am sure I would have been bounced out of the school, because as we talked about earlier, I was a pain in the butt. I would finish my work early. I could race through it. We had these things called SRA kit. You go and you read, you have to answer some questions, do some things. And I was able to just go through them just like nothing. And then I'd be a pain in the neck. And thankfully, and I don't know how it happened, if they had a conference about me or anything, but at one point they decided, you can go to the library. And I loved it, because the library was a place where I was making movies, and me and my friend were making these things that we called tape radio, because it was basically a podcast that we recorded on a cassette tape. And I could go there, and my librarian, Mrs. Drew, was just so, she was the best, absolute best. So I hold school librarians in the highest of esteem.
Oh, well, she sounds amazing.
She was. She passed. I was able to connect with her, as a grown up before she passed away through, the magic of social media. And that was wonderful. It was really funny, because I said, I don't know if you remember me. And she says, I certainly remember you. And I remember your mother was mad at me one time because I introduced you to the musical Jesus Christ Superstar. And I go, whoa, you remember me.
Yeah. Oh, well, our kids that are frequent flyers definitely stay in our hearts. That's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. So I love giving, you're like the advocate for everything that I love, and love to support here in the podcast. Talk about, please, the importance of a librarian to a school. And not, obviously, it helped me, but not every school needs to be worried about, some loudmouth kid who wants to make tape radio shows. But talk about just how important you think a school library is.
Well, I know it's said a lot, and I know it's maybe a little cliche, but the library really is the heart. I actually came to a school that had no library for several years after COVID, and they had no programs. They had a library space, but they didn't use it as a library. They used it as kind of a dumping ground. And when I was able to come in and do just the normal things that librarians do, recommend books, have the STEM, the STEM classes, for them to do those things, have a safe space for reading, a lot of time just spent with them pulling SEL things, like they're struggling in class with this behavior. Let me just read a book with you and we can talk about your feelings. Having therapists come in and having the kids read them, having responsibilities in the library that the kids were able to take out, the leadership that comes in through the library by students having ownership of the space. It just trickles out into the school. And without those things, you're losing that space where they can learn about digital literacy and digital safety and having a safe space just to discover and it not be tied to standardized testing. And schools without librarians that know how to do that are just missing all of these things that they don't even know that they're missing.
Yeah. And there is a shockingly high number of schools that don't have libraries and certainly don't have trained librarians. My beautiful wife taught in the Boston Public Schools for 34 years. The last school that she was at on paper had a library, but it was literally a cage that a teacher's aide would sit in, and the kids would come up to the cage door and they would be handed a book. It's not like I want a book about this and then she'd recommend it or in no way for the kids to go through and choose a book. It was just here's a book. And it was so bad that my wife built a library in her classroom and had hundreds and hundreds of books in her classroom. And so her kids had the advantage of a library, but still not all those other neat things that you.
No, that's heartbreaking. That's somewhat what it was like here. When I got here at this particular school, the average age of the books was 1998. So we're talking well before my students were born. And so I just have to imagine that schools that don't have that person that is focused on developing a diverse and newer collection, I can't even imagine what their kids would be reading.
Mm-hmm.
That's very disheartening.
Yeah. So here you are. You're kind of like my superhero. You're a school librarian. You're a foster / adopted mom. You're a pretty special person. Where does all that love that you're putting out in the world, where does that come from?
Well, I was very blessed that my mom was a social worker, and she was also a person that pulled herself up by her bootstraps, and she was the first person to ever graduate in her family. And she just instilled that love of reading in me to begin with, and then just that care for other people. I remember in one of my essays at school that I wrote that, like, I was going to adopt, kids from every country in the world, and that one didn't happen. But when I got older, she passed, and I knew one of the ways that I wanted to honor her memory was to become a foster parent. And then it just worked out really well because I'd already had the love of reading and the foster parent. And so I'm so honored that my publisher saw that those were two things that needed to be melded together.
Absolutely. There's someone listening out there who's on the fence. They hear that there are 400,000 kids in foster care waiting for a forever home. But they don't think they've heard all these things. Oh, it's the problems, there's issues, and they come and they got all these issues. And I don't know if I could love somebody who's not my blood. Talk to that person. We don't want to have to give them a hard sell, but just talk to that person a little bit.
I think what you said earlier about it doesn't, gathering my thoughts. It doesn't have to be perfect. Your kids, your biological kids are going to be difficult. You're going to have to teach them lessons. You're going to have to be consistent. And that's all these kids really need to flourish, to become just these incredible, they're already incredible people, but just to get past those obstacles. They just need somebody in their lives that will be consistently there for them and be willing to make the mistakes, because as parents, we're always making mistakes. Mm-hmm. And just because you do that with a foster child doesn't mean that you couldn't do it. It just means that you have to accept that you'll make the mistakes and love them anyways.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I have a feeling, talking with you, that I'm probably embarrassing you, so I don't mean to do that. But you're not. I don't get the sense that this is. You're not Mother Teresa. You're getting something out of this too.
Yes. I am. I was so blessed. Like I look at my life and I look at my children that I have, and I just am like, I don't know how I got so lucky. Like, how did I get these little people, and how are they mine? Like, and some of them are big people now, but how are they in my life? And I don't know why I got so lucky, and I'm very blessed. We'll just put it that way.
That's beautiful. Well, I feel pretty blessed to have had a chance to meet you, and I know people are absolutely going to want to know where they can go to find out more about Pedro the Pirate and find out more about you.
Well, I do have a website that I will share with you, I think, we could do it that way. But also, if you are interested in Pedro the Pirate, if you want to go ahead to Cardinal Rule Press, you could look at their website. They have amazing books that cover everything from Army parents to being new in a school, even a Jamaican book. We were talking about Jamaica earlier. And so, yes, I want you to go check out Pedro the Pirate, but you need to check out the publisher as well, just because those books are phenomenal. And then you can also head to my website, but it'll be on sale in all the places where you can buy books. But I especially love bookshop.org to support those indie publishers.
And another thing we can do that's really helpful, not only to Ciara, but also helpful to people in your community, if you head on down to your library and you say, hey, do you have Pedro the Pirate? And they say, no, what's Pedro the Pirate? You just, well, let me tell you, you got to have this book in your library. It's going to help families. It's going to help families. And so you can do that.
Yes, please do.
We've had a great time speaking to the author of Pedro the Pirate. She's also an awesome school librarian and a beautiful mom. Our guest has been Ciara O'Neal. Ciara, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Are you looking for a creative way to bond with your kids? Let me tell you all about Drawing with Your Kids, the ultimate destination for artistic adventures. Join us as we dive into the wonderful world of children's books with renowned illustrators guiding you step by step. From beloved characters to whimsical scenes, unleash your imagination and create cherished memories together. Whether you're a seasoned artist or just picking up a pencil, there's something for everyone at Drawing with Your Kids. Please visit our website, readingwithyourkids.com, and click on the Drawing with Your Kids link at the top of the page and let the creativity flow. Drawing with Your Kids, where every stroke brings stories to life. We have a big announcement. We have a brand new Reading with Your Kids certified great read. Rohan and Naira and the Big Sisters Bet. It's a charming and engaging addition to Anthony C. Deloney's award-winning kids' money book series. This delightful story brings financial literacy to life through the fun and relatable experience of a big sibling bet. The plot centers around a weekend visit from Naira, Rohan's older sister, who introduces a playful challenge reminiscent of their father's lessons. The bet involves Rohan catching as many football passes as he can, and with each successful catch, earns him $1. The catch, a pun intended, is that if he drops the ball, he loses all the money he has earned so far. Deloney masterfully uses this simple but effective game to teach children about risk, reward, and the temptation of greed. As Rohan catches pass after pass, his excitement grows, and he starts imagining all the wonderful things he can buy. The suspense builds as he faces the dilemma of whether to continue for a potentially larger reward or stop to secure his current winnings. The narrative is not only entertaining, but also packed with valuable lessons. Rohan's eventual decision to keep going results in a drop pass and the loss of all his earnings, teaching a poignant lesson about the consequences of greed and the importance of making wise decisions. Naira's supportive and understanding response to Rohan's disappointment further enriches the story. She shares her own similar experience and the valuable lessons she learned, reinforcing the book's core message in a compassionate and relatable way. You're going to love this book. Your kid's going to love it too. It's Rohan and Naira and Big Sisters Bet. A certified great read written by Anthony Deloney. Before we invite our guest into the studio, I would love to invite you to visit a very special website. It's clownswithoutborders.org. Clownswithoutborders.org. This is a group that I absolutely adore. I am part of Clowns Without Borders, and I had the honor of being part of the 2023 tour of El Salvador. I had so much fun joining with artists from all over the world to bring a smile to people who really needed it and really appreciated it too. And we would love for you to join us as a monthly Joy Maker. The Joy Makers, they're a family of people just like you who love to laugh and make other people feel good. So please take a moment and visit clownswithoutborders.org and consider joining me as a Joy Maker. Join us right now from the lovely state of Connecticut. Our guest is returning to Reading with Your Kids to celebrate her beautiful picture books. One is called Let's Count New York City, and N is for New York City. Please welcome back to the show, Adina Oberman. Hey, Adina, how are you?
Good. Thanks for having me back on. It's great to be here with you.
Delighted to have you back on. You were a guest very early on in the life of Reading with Your Kids. At that time, as I recall, you had your own daycare center.
I was teaching preschool at the time, yes.
Preschool, yeah, teaching preschool. Now, in addition to being an author, you are doing publicity for our friends at Familias Publishing.
Yes, I am. Familias is a wonderful team. We're a small team, but we do a lot, and I'm very fortunate to be a part of it.
So tell us about these new books.
So Familias has a regional book series, and we are always working on expanding it. So I lived in New York my whole life until just a few years ago when I moved with my family. But we wanted to expand the series to include more cities on the East Coast. So we decided to do Let's Count New York City, and N is for New York City. And both books are board books. Let's Count New York City is counting in colors in New York City, and N is for New York City is an ABC primer. So these are both two beautifully illustrated books by the very talented illustrator Volha Kaliaha. And they're super fun, and I like to think of them as taking a sightseeing stroll around New York City right from your own home. So they have all of the fun landmarks and all the fun sites that you would find in New York City. And they're, they're for babies like ages 0 to 2, but older kids enjoy them too. And they're just really fun and colorful and great for exposing babies and toddlers to lots of language and lots of color and, of course, letters and numbers.
Yeah. Let's talk about that. We've heard and we've shared here on the podcast the statistic that if you read with your kids 20 minutes a day, every day, by the time that kid gets to preschool, they will have heard over 800,000 to 1 million more words than their peers who haven't been read to every day. Could you talk a little bit about why that's so important, why it's important for kids to be exposed to as many words as possible?
Yes, I'm so glad you brought that up because it's really important, and I love talking about early childhood and child development. So you're 100% right. A lot of people, when they have really, really young kids, babies and toddlers, they might not totally understand or be thinking about how important exposure is. And so that's kind of what we call it at this age. You're exposing young kids to examples of words, language, making eye contact, the back and forth of a conversation, what sounds each letter makes, how to move your mouth when you're talking. All of these things are things that that are happening when you're reading to a child, especially in your lap. They're taking that in, and those are really laying the foundation for the earliest speech and language skills, the earliest social skills, and really the earliest learning skills. I always used to tell parents of my students in my classes that you can't learn to read and write if you don't build those foundational skills of pre-writing and pre-reading. And the same is true with social skills. So you, just by virtue of reading a book, you're showing your baby, no matter how young, how important reading is, and each book helps them hopefully turn into a lifelong reader, someone who sees the value in reading and the value in communicating and socializing. So those are just a few of the things that are happening kind of behind the scenes when you're reading to your child. So it's really important. And I always like to say it almost doesn't matter what you read your child. If you love sports magazines, or you like finding new recipes in a cookbook with young kids, as long as they will listen, you can read to them at that baby stage. They'll listen to you say anything. And then as they get older, you can always find books that are more aligned with their interests. So I would say read as much as you can, no matter how old your child is.
Yeah. It's interesting. I don't think many people realize that we know that our kids are looking at us and that we're role models, and hopefully we understand that we are our kids' first and most important teachers. But that just as something as simple as kids watching us shape how we shape our mouth when we're speaking. I mean, I'm currently failing at speaking right now, but it's so important for our kids to see that so they can imitate us.
Absolutely. So I'm not just a teacher, I'm also a mom, and my son from very early on got speech therapy, and part of that speech therapy was not just the formation of words, but learning how to move the muscles in your face, using your tongue to produce certain sounds. These are all things that come naturally to many of us, especially as adults. But as children, we're watching the grown-ups around us speak. And that's why during COVID, when so many teachers had to teach with masks on and children had to go to school with masks on, it was really a challenge for many children who were just acquiring language, just learning how to speak, or even children who were already receiving some kind of speech therapy, because there's so much that you learn just by watching people speak, especially at that young age. So making eye contact and making sure that your child is looking at you really goes a long way.
Yeah, I think we forget just how much kids are learning in those first 3 years, those first 5 years. They're going from zero to everything. You know, they're learning how to speak. They're learning how to read. They're learning how to interact with people. It's really overwhelming.
Absolutely. One thing that our founder at Familias, Christopher Robbins, one thing that he says that we love to remind everyone in our community is that the most important work that you will ever do in your whole life is the work that you do in your own home. And that is something that I think rings true for every family, because home is where you learn all of the things big and small, from how to speak and how to read to how you interact with people and how you view the world. So I think that this is just kind of one little piece of that.
Yeah. I'm imagining too, you mentioned that your son takes speech therapy, which is something that I did as a kid. And based on this conversation, I probably should go back to it at some point. But I'm imagining that spending the time with your kids and being conscious and being mindful when you're with your kids, that might be a great way to identify if your kid's having some issues and getting them that intervention as early as possible.
Absolutely. Early intervention for kids who need supports or therapy is crucial. I taught preschool for a very long time, and I always told parents that I wish every child would have a special education evaluation, simply because we all have things that we're working on, even as adults, right? We're not perfect. We're all a work in progress. And so it's really valuable to see where our kids, especially young kids, need support and where they're excelling, so that we can try to help them become more balanced and successful, and to just truly be able to share with the world who they are. So as early as possible, if you have, questions, I always say, talk to your child's pediatrician, talk to any other caring adults in their lives, whether it's caregivers, teachers at a child care center, a classroom teacher. If you have a family friend who works in the early childhood space, talk to them. And I know that can kind of be an overwhelming thing for parents, because nobody wants to be told, that there are limits on what they can do or what their child can do. But speaking from experience, the support of early intervention and special education will help to remove or improve those barriers and make your child really take advantage of their full potential. So I always say that it's kind of the best thing that you can do. And the worst thing that happens is that they say, no, your child is developing normally, and you don't have to worry.
Yeah. And that, great news.
Yes.
Do you think that because I've heard that some folks are hesitant to go and get their kids evaluated because they don't want people to think that they were a failure as a parent.
And that's valid. That's completely valid, right? I think we all feel like our kids, our family, are a reflection of ourselves. And I think that is certainly true. I also think that it's important to sort of try to look beyond the feelings that you might have about yourself, because as parents, we all want the best for our kids, right? Even if that means that we're uncertain or unsure. I think you would probably speak to any parent and they would say to you that they would do anything for their child. And if that means feeling like they have something that they can improve, the best thing is for professional people to help you learn how to do that and better support your child. It's not a reflection of a failure. I like to think of it as like a how-to, right? I remember having my daughter, who's my first, and thinking, oh my gosh, there's not a how-to manual for this, right? And when we got started with early intervention for my son, even as an early childhood professional, I wasn't a speech therapist, I wasn't a feeding therapist, so I only had really limited ideas about how I could support my son, especially as like a baby and toddler. And so I just felt like all of the resources that I got from speech therapists and special education were like my little mini how-to manual with my son, and it kind of changed everything. Yeah. So I always say go for it.
Yeah, absolutely. Getting back to Let's Count NYC, and N is for NYC, I think even young kids, get excited about taking a trip. And I'm imagining whether it's a family that's going to visit New York City, or if it's a family that is in the New York area and go into the city, oftentimes to be able to look at a book and become familiar with the site or a landmark and then go and see it. It means something a little bit different. The Empire State Building, you're 2 years old. Big deal. It's a big, but if it's something that you've been reading about and looking forward to, now it's like, wow, this is the thing that it's been part of my life.
Yes, absolutely. I think that there's kind of something in the books for everyone, whether you're going to be visiting New York City, whether you are a local, if you're a sports fan, in the books, we have D is for Derek Jeter, and, we have pictures of, MetLife Stadium. And if you're a foodie, we have, my personal favorite, which is, bagels and lox in the book. We talk about how, New Yorkers are famous for pizza, which we call a slice. So you'll find some pizza references in there, and it's kind of fun for anyone with any interest.
Yeah, that's so cool. That's so cool. Hey, you mentioned Christopher Robin, who was an early guest here on Reading with Your Kids, and we've had such a great relationship with our friends at Familias. Can you just talk a little bit about the publishing house and its mission? I mention that because I think of all the different publishers that we've worked with, I just get the sense that there's a real that Christopher, when he was on the show, was very sincere in his desire and his mission to help families be happy.
Absolutely. So Familias was founded by Christopher and Michelle Robbins, husband and wife team. And that is, you nailed it. That is their mission. The mission of the company and the mission of the Robbins family is to help families be happier. So all of our work, our books, our content, everything is aimed at helping families be happier. And to that end, we have our 10 habits of happy families, which are ways that we encourage families to engage with each other. We have read together, learn together, work together, play together, give together. I'm missing a few right now, but everything that we do as a company is aimed at accomplishing that mission. And so we always bear that in mind when we create books. So even board books for babies, all the way up to parenting titles and cookbooks. We have an absolutely incredible lineup of picture books, which recently won several awards. We're very proud to have won 4 awards in the Ford Indies Awards this year. And yes, everything we do is just sort of aimed to be used as a family in the home. Hopefully, we also hope that we inspire teachers. We love our teachers and our educators. And we have a podcast also. And we have a lot on our website, including a blog, and all of it is just really there to give families tools. Mm-hmm. And I'm very fortunate to be a part of that team.
One thing that you mentioned, one of your rules for I think you said rules for happiness, give together. I don't think we've talked about it enough. We with my kids, starting at a very young age, we sponsored a young man in India in his college and seminary journey, and we're still in touch with him. My kids are very much aware of him and what we were doing for him. Later in life, when my beautiful wife and I led a ministry to homeless people here in Boston, my kids were a part of that, and it's. You're talking about being a role model in terms of reading with your kids. I think being a role model in terms of giving and sharing the blessings that we have is it's such a gift that we can give to our kids, having them be a part of that.
Absolutely. So, it's interesting you brought that up because Familias used to have the 9 habits of happy families, and Give Together is actually was the newest one, and that's what made it our 10 habits of happy families. But that's something that we as a company believe in very strongly. We do a lot of book donations to schools and classrooms and nonprofits. And last year was our 2nd year in a row of doing a donation match during the holidays. So for every book sold between Thanksgiving and I believe Christmas, or Thanksgiving and New Year's, we matched that number and donated books to an organization, which is incredible, called Storybook Maze, who provides diverse books in book deserts in the city of in and around Maryland in the DC area. And that's something that we're very proud to be doing, and really just sort of helps us show the importance of giving together.
That's wonderful. Hey, you know what would be important? To tell everybody where they can go to find out more about your books and find out more about Familias.
Yes, absolutely. So you can find me on Instagram. I have my own blog full of recommendations for amazing children's books. So you can find me at the letters BBL and then the word hands. So it's at BBL Hands on Instagram. I have lots of content about really helpful books. And then also my blog goes more in depth. So you can find me at bigbooksforlittlehands.com. And whether you are navigating potty training, moving to a new home, the loss of a loved one, tantrums, picky eating, any challenge of early childhood, there are so many great books that can help you navigate that. So check out my website and hopefully you'll find some great books. A lot of times they're books that, you can get from your local library. And if you're looking for N is for New York City or Let's Count New York City, you can get it anywhere, at familias.com, at your local independent bookseller, Barnes & Noble, Amazon, anywhere that books are sold. You can pre-order, anytime, and after August 6th, they will ship out to you.
We've had a great time speaking to the author of Let's Count New York City. Our guest has been Adina Oberman. Adina, thanks so much for being back with us.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of Reading with Your Kids, and we hope it inspired you to join us for the next exciting episode of the show. We also hope that it will inspire you to leave us a 5-star review on whatever podcasting platform you are experiencing this show at. And please comment. Let people know what you think about the show. It really makes a difference and really helps us in our mission to help all families grow closer through reading. We would love for you to connect with us on social media, facebook.com/readingwithyourkids, at Reading With Your Kids on Instagram, at JedlyMagic on Twitter. We have a great YouTube channel, youtube.com/readingwithyourkids. You can find our Drawing With Your Kids and Stimmons Family Fun videos on our YouTube channel. We'd also love for you to visit our website, readingwithyourkids.com. If you click on our blog, you can read our full review of Anthony Delauny's brand new Reading With Your Kids Certified Great Read. You can also go to our Certified Great Read Wall of Fame and find our full review of Astronaut Aquanaut, written by our Dean of All Things Stimmenstein, Jennifer Swanson. Want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful. Of course, we want to start by thanking our wonderful guest, Adina Oberman. Please be sure to check out Let's Count New York City. And of course, Ciara O'Neal. Please be sure to check out Pedro the Pirate. And also please consider supporting a foster kid either in your home or in your neighborhood. I want to thank my team, Fatima Khan, Chris Doherty, Rory Grady, Judy Hu, Stella Sheree, Hannah Bosange, Alyssa Montiero, Devin Hill, Riley Olulu. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, we all want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place. And you do that every time you read with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next episode of Reading with Your Kids.